Hey, good morning, everybody. When I say good morning, I should probably caveat that with no, it's not good. The market obviously sold off, so I wanted to get a message out to everybody. Steve Ankerstar here, financial education presentation. You have to do your own diligence before acting upon anything you hear in this presentation. More disclaimer information is available at ankerstarwealth.com. And my opinions expressed are mine and mine alone. But I do want to say that because we are all different. And even I've been talking with advisors on the team here last night and tonight, we're all a little bit different. Nobody knows, nobody has a perfect crystal ball as exactly how this is going to play out. But I at least wanted you to hear my thoughts. And then if you're my client, contact me. If you otherwise contact your advisor and talk this through if you have any questions. But obviously, yesterday the big event that's causing the sell-off was you had Trump make his announcements of all of the kind of remaining tariffs, if you will. If you kind of zoom out a little bit, so we had the election and the market went on this tear after the election. It's just like sugar high, if you will, is kind of what I was calling it. So everything is awesome. And then people expected tax reform and they expected favorable business regulation, that sort of thing. We've really only been talking about, well, we've had Doge, which is one thing, which kind of was a blunt force trauma to a lot of folks. And then also the tariff is another pretty blunt weapon to put out there. So there was the expectation, the everything is all, the market tends to operate in extremes, right? You have the everything is awesome phase, which is never as awesome as people think it is. And then there's the world is ending phase, which the world is not ending, or at least has not yet. And I don't think this is the event that's going to take us there. So, in headlines from the news media, support that on both sides, right? They take you one or the other, right? So there's really not a whole lot of this too shall pass, stay calm, soldier on sort of thing out there. But yeah, so the expectations were a Trump administration very similar to his first one, right? So the market went up basically the whole time, reducing taxes and cutting business regulation, right? So now I'm not going to get political, whether you like them or not, or whether you're Republican or Democrat, none of that matters to the markets, right? So the markets are down. But there was kind of an expectation as far as a professional money allocator of, okay, here's where we put money to work, right? Under certain expectations. And the Doge really didn't have much of an impact to the markets, but certainly the tariff thing did. So we've kind of been watching that going into 2025. It's really been kind of a tariff induced sell off in the markets. And is it because of the impact of the tariffs? I would contend a little bit. Certainly, there are people and companies that are affected by it. But as a whole, I think it's more of the uncertainty. And we talked about that in the shows earlier in the week about uncertainties driving the sell off. So when uncertainty drives a sell off, you're simply taking money out of the market, generally across the board, right? You're selling Apple along with Ford Motor that could be directly input, So there's all kinds of different companies that are affected in differing measures, but basically everything sells off as cash basically flushes to the sideline. And our number one holding is cash right now too. Even though we tried to stay fully invested through all this, thinking that the tariff thing, when you have a sell off, you have to ask yourself, okay, why is there a sell off? In this case, it's the tariffs. It's like, okay, how long is it going to last? Well, not forever. That's one thing. So eventually this goes away and the market goes back higher. But certainly in the short term, is this like, is it going to cause systemic problems in the economy? You have some folks out there that might make that case, but I'd say 99% of us think, well, no, right? It's simply a renegotiation of some trade terms that have, I use the term devolved over time. So when the tariff thing, it's not like it's going to go away. I think it's here to stay, but certainly when it stabilizes, right? So we had, last night we had a whole lot of new information, released upon the markets, if you will. And the market's got to digest that. So the initial reaction is, okay, all this is bad, right? So more money to the sidelines, more indiscriminate selling. So that's why, I checked this morning at the worst, it was like, you know, 4% down in the NASDAQ, which again, we're tech heavy. So we watch the NASDAQ a little closer than the rest. But certainly there's just selling while everybody processes the information. So I think one of two things is going to happen. And I laid this out, and I'll put this in the verbiage if you're reading an email with this, is that we're renegotiating obviously trade terms, but also we don't, Trump is a pretty blunt force kind of person, it seems. That's my opinion. So this may be kind of the strategy, like the substitute teacher, right? Come in as the really hard at first and then soften them up. So if this is the worst case that we're seeing, instead of the base case, so I don't think it's going to get worse from here. Meaning he's not going to go and levy more. I think it is what it is. Some will stay in place, some will get walked back / negotiated country by country. And that will depend on a lot of things, and that may not happen overnight. No expectation that this is fast. But what I do expect, so I think that's the two scenarios. But either whether the strategy is these are going to stay in place and we're going to fix the trade issues the U.S. has had for decades, and deal with it, or we're going to use this to negotiate. Either way, the result is that the narrative is going to shift. So right now, the world's ending this morning, right? Because of tariffs and trade wars, and the headlines are out of control. But when you think of, okay, this is the first 100 days of a presidency, obviously his second term, obviously he's being very aggressive. So I think there's just a lot of, uncertainty there. When that starts to resolve, the narrative is going to change from tariffs. So I don't think if you fast forward a month from now, we're not talking tariffs, we're talking tax reform, because that's going on behind the scenes now, but it's not getting any headline press, right? Tax cuts and Job Act too. What's going to happen to all the, tax cuts? Are they getting extended? We all think that, right? But, the stuff that really impacts us, as U.S. citizens, that stuff is going on behind the scenes. Cutting regulation and the favorable business environment. I think that's where the narrative goes. So, I'm not, I'm an outsider looking in like all of us on the Trump administration, but I do think I want to believe it was Corey or Mike that had the chart earlier this week that showed, okay, the stock market under Trump won, which was kind of I'll do anything to make the stock market go up kind of. That's the impression, right? Obviously, that wasn't exactly the case. But now it appears it's like I will fully accept the stock market selling off initially to right size some certain things, right? The size of the government, the trade relationships. And then I think the narrative shifts to a more positive, tilt, right? So I think when you look at the rest of this year, I think we bottom here, in this month or, maybe even tomorrow, right? Or even today. I would be shocked if we stayed at a 4% down situation, because I think people are really going to process, the emotions kind of fade real quick, right? And then you take a hard look, which we'll be doing all day in a conference this morning, and then fly back. But we'll be sitting there looking at, okay, exactly who's affected by this? What decisions do we need to make based off of that? And I think you're going to see money coming back to work. Like, Amazon is just an individual company example. I think has been totally unfairly hit for this. But, we'll see. But anyhow, that's how you look at it from a tactical allocation standpoint. So I don't think it's going to last a long time. It could, right? I have no crystal ball like anybody else. It could, so I could be wrong here, but I'm not selling the cash. We're sticking with best of breed. We really only invest in quality anyway, so there's not a whole lot of cutting of questionable stuff out. But certainly, I think you just stick with your plan, keep calm and carry on sort of mentality while this goes through. So the things we know is tariff Mageddon will end eventually, and then the markets will go back higher, because I think that's what we all expect to see under the Trump administration. So I'll leave you with that. That may not have answered any of your questions, but that may have hopefully gave you a little bit of perspective as far as what's going on and how the markets tend to operate at the extremes, but we all operate in the middle, sort of thing. So as your portfolio, and I just have to think Trump's not liking the wealth destruction talk out there. He's more of a wealth creation kind of guy. So I do think this will blow through. The timeline unknown. I think sooner than later. I have people on our own team that would disagree with me, so nobody knows. Nobody's right and wrong. We shall see, but yeah, we just know that it will pass at some point. and things will march back on higher. So that's all I've got for you today. Don't forget to reach out to me if you have any questions, whether you're a client or not. If one of my other advisors is handling your situation, talk with them over this. There should never be a time where you're sitting there as a client stressing over your portfolio when we're all sitting here available for you, just if nothing else, to talk things through. So with that, thank you so much for listening in. Hang in there, and we'll see how all this plays out. You have a good one.